Hello there, my name's Tim Walter. I'm a house healer and an alternative life coach. Quite often with people that are opening and expanding their consciousness, they do say that they have contact with extraterrestrial beings and varying degrees of, shall we say, solidity. I mean, from my point of view, I'm not really talking about or thinking about a carbon-based life form. I'm thinking about those aspects of creation that can exist and we can connect to in the subtle realms, in the subtle energy fields. However, I mean, Valentina, what's your experience of that sort of association with beings in either solid form or subtle realm?
I mean, I'm kind of counting on these experiences because I had many, and it's bringing so much, as Amit said, is the spark of creativity and of connection is so strong. So I can tell you, for example, one very simple exercise, which I had the intuition of it since I was a child, which I practiced without knowing at that time. So which helped me eventually to become aware very easily of the fact that we are integrating, in this universe, And it was like this. So we are anyway in between these four walls of your rooms, physically isolated, whatever, away from the world. That's what you think initially, right? And you can make this habit that, for example, once a week, you go out of this room with the help of the thought initially, in order to learn to expand your consciousness into a more and more vast space, it's as if you're inhabiting your whole room, that house, and the city that you live in. And then you imagine or visualize that this city is part of a region, and this region is also part of the country is part of a continent, the continent is on Earth, and Earth is part of the planet family in the solar system, and so on, And then later I discovered that this was kind of an exercise which was really done by this group that I was part of, CSETI, Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, as a way of expand and call them and present yourself kind of, and then guide them. There's a whole beautiful method, very, very easy. And if your heart is pure, and if that's your time, many people have really very easily experienced it. And very special experience of healing, or at least awakening of the heart, All right, so also again, then that the solar system is part of the galaxy, and the galaxy is a tiny part of the macrocosm. You know how little is discovered of all this macrocosm, and we still think that we are so important, right? We are so important, in this little ego constricted state, But when love comes in, for example, you lose that kind of importance, and humbleness comes in, and at the same time you're melting. So it doesn't have to be so difficult. Indeed, we lack a lot of education. That's a big, big problem. But to me, when love comes in, and you say yes, for me, that's the easiest gate to this kind of expansion, at least, And because the fact is that many divine, invisible entities continuously are around us, And you also know very well in your center, you told me about your experiences of healing. But again, knowing this, it's we need to also at least intend, to enter in communion with them, and to do that. I don't know, as I said, that's once a week, for example, because there's a lot of help available, and I noticed also the experiences with the angels and with the extraterrestrials, that it's like as if they always search for a place in our heart, and in order to act, and it brings us towards higher spiritual joys, But for example, if we are only very dry mentally, or we lack qualities like gratitude, it's nothing that it's attracting. So it's, but again, the idea is that we need to open this gate for angels, for higher evolved extraterrestrial beings, and Amit mentioned this unconscious, because all these events in the entire universe, without exception, everything that swirls in the world, we receive from this, if you want to say in this way, in various circumstances, all these mysterious glimpses that then are registered in our unconscious, right? This quantum unconscious or subconscious. And often, most of the times for me, without notice, one may receive in this way messages from the entire macrocosm, from a very high archetype there. That's how we move in the direction of an archetype of fulfilling our dharma. We need to get into that, what is called inspiration. And that's one of the ways, because without inspiration, you cannot apply anything. Don't think of that movie, The Secret, because this is missing. Without inspiration, you cannot apply the next step, the intent. So you need to get into something to expand you. All right. And meditation, of course, is the way. But first of all, of course, learn mental focus. And so on. It's a whole trip there waiting,
Yeah, right. And so one of the things that the couple of words there you use, which is if your heart is pure, then you can connect to those aspects of consciousness. I have had a lot of people on my channel at various times asking questions about extraterrestrials and all of that sort of stuff, and a lot of the time they are expressing fear. They come at the whole thing. They come, but well, no, you mustn't get involved in extraterrestrials. It's the greys will get you, or all this sort of thing. And I'm not taking the mickey out of them. I completely understand that there is some caution, and in their case, quite often fear. Is that because they're not doing the work internally and kind of in the spiritual sense, using that in the heart vibration? Is that therefore do they access a different level of experience?
Well, of course, as you know, it's so many movies and how they are depicted, It's kind of all this. And of course, there are people, and even Dr. Stephen Greer, who's speaking about this military agenda. I'm not going to talk about these things, and kind of that we are not very much, supported in seeing the extraterrestrial reality as fraternal, but instead of some violent creatures and I don't know what forms I don't know what they will do. So there's a lot of things which happen. I mean, we don't even know what's happening in our little houses, And then immediately, because we are picking up what the media is saying or what these movies are depicting there, we immediately form a certain image, which of course it can keep us from certain experiences,
Yeah.
But in the same time, if we follow our dharma, we follow some archetype, eventually we will bump also in this kind of aspects and ask what is our place in this universe. But still, according to where you are, these things may come naturally. So for me, it was natural.
Yeah, because again, it comes back round to this is always the issue that I find, not issue, it's not a problem. It's just, I think it requires a different way of thinking about life, about reality. That we have to always talk about things in human terms, but also, we're talking about the quantum field of infinite possibility and the fact that we are part of that and creating that. And so therefore, when we talk about the vastness of the universe, there's no part of the universe, even though we don't know where half of it is, that isn't here right now if we want it to be. If we're connected in through the creative field, the quantum field of potentiality. I mean, that's fundamentally true. Is that right? Is that correct, Amit?
Wait just a second. Let me add something. In that line, there is also something which is called the resonance. And all these relationships between beings in the macrocosm, they follow the same law of resonance, kind of. For example, when you're dialing a number, the owner of the number will pick up, right? Yeah. And in the same way, a certain entity will mysteriously communicate with you when you send specific thoughts that vibrate in unison, on towards that state of resonance. It's a lot about resonance, a wonderful concept which we have to understand what is that. It's not that if you work with the specific angel or archangel or some highly evolved extraterrestrial, you're manifesting this intent, somebody else will pick up. Okay, now I let you, Amit.
Okay, so I think that, again, we can look at history for getting some hints. it has always been a curiosity for me. Where do we get these wonderful figures, pictures, the form that we give to the archetypes of the collective unconscious? Every culture has these gods and goddesses, angels, archangels, and they have actual form. Where did this form come from? And you know, there are speculators or maybe savants, depends on your attitude, how you look at them, who write books saying that, well, maybe these ideas were actually borrowed from extraterrestrials who visited us at some point. We immediately disregard this concept because our attitude is to think that we have more or less always an ascending civilization. Yeah. Not true, of course, because we are very connected in the later part of the hunter-gatherer, which Aurobindo calls horticultural or garden agriculture society. We are very connected at that time. And that is precisely the time when we had these pictures of gods and goddesses that came to us. So if we make the correlation, then obviously there were extraterrestrial visitation around that time because they can, because humanity were connected, therefore they can. And with that assumption, why are they coming now? Again, look at the very fact how interesting the numbers are. The world population has roughly increased 5-6 times during these thousands of years. So the population that was there in that very connected world at the time is very similar to the population now for this 15% that I talked about. So in a sense, if we become very optimistic, then we may have already begun to have a connected reality, because it is a fact, you know, we go around, we travel a lot, we communicate with a lot of people, and it is striking. Although there is the intellectuals and they create division, but there also are enormous amount of people who are picking up the knowledge anyway, and it is very hard to understand it because the internet is so vast and it's full of conspiracy theories, either materialism or religious-based. How are they noticing this reality as truth, these ideas? So maybe there is that is repeating, history is repeating again, and then we should take this visitations, concept of visitation seriously, eliminate the ideas which are leading to nowhere, the materialist take, like, you know, there's actually physical objects coming to us. No, physical objects cannot, and it's not needed. The physical objects do not have this infinite potentiality for us to choose from. It has to be the non-material aspect of us. And the non-material aspect of us is now being verified so many different ways. And so many different ways, we are also verifying the idea that we can give up this attachment to the physical body and roam around in the cosmos non-locally, which does not have to be limited to the earth at all, because there is no distance in non-locality. So we have become free to roam around the universe once again, because so many people, you know, this guy Monroe, he taught so many people out of the body experiences. It can be learned fairly easily, and then freedom comes to us that have never been there before. So this is the kind of direction that we must go, and we must go not hoping to get approval from the government, from the establishment, from the constricted minds of the academe. We must appeal to the same 15% that are open to developing this new connectivity among humanity and getting somewhere. This is our hope and this is our future. And as this extraterrestrials connection grows and we understand it properly, put it in proper perspective, we will probably be pleasantly surprised with how much help they can give us in giving a real push. Because this time we already have done the mind bit. We have already done that separation bit. So we won't be fooled anymore into separation again. Once we can overcome this crisis that is going on now, this is separation more or less at its maximum. So after that, you know, that dream Valentina starts the discussion with how to get back to unity. It is right in front of us. We just have to take these hints and be open to them and unabashedly start exploring these new openings.
I really do feel that that is exactly the path that we're on. It doesn't look like it if you look at a snapshot of humanity now, right now, whatever now is, but we are on this trajectory of improvement. It's just that we're going through the bumpy patch, that bumpy patch of change, that the healing reaction. And really what you're talking about is this sort of cycle that occurs within history. Sort of, I think they could talk about it being every 26,000 years or so, where we come back round to this sort of a process of enchantment that we can experience as a human species together. And 26,000 years ago or so, or even more recently than that, 4,000 BC, we're looking at things like Stonehenge and that sort of relationship with the earth, but from a very subtle energy point of view. Stone monuments that were built and the flows of, well, I would call it earth energy around the earth, are intimately connected to what goes on in here. And so we've clearly, as a species, been experimenting with what goes on in here through shamans and all of that sort of process for thousands and thousands of years. And now we're just coming back to that recognition of we're having the freedom, freedom is a word that you used, we're having the freedom to actually explore that again. And it's really, really important. As you said, it is really important that we actually recognize our own ability to make those choices to step into freedom once again. There are people like Greg Braden and Nassam, can't remember his name, Nassam, bless him, he's a physicist, but he's also really into sacred geometry and the resonant field, which is basically the 0-point field, the quantum field of infinite possibility. Greg and him talk about extraterrestrial intervention into the human species thousands of years ago, at the time when the Neanderthals were sharing Earth with what became the modern human being. And they suggest that there is scientific evidence that extraterrestrial intervention changed the structure of DNA to actually create what we have today as the modern human. But again, history is history, but history is also only a story that we tell ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and there are some directions, obviously, that cannot be ignored and must be taken up. It is very clear that the sacred geometries do play a part in our personal growth. If we use them, they can focus cosmic vital energy much better. My associate Anil Sinha and I have analyzed the experiments that he did, that about Tesla's big idea. So that developed into technological radionics. The explanation that they give usually confusing, but quantum science has an acceptable scientific explanation of how it works. And then amazingly, we found that if you put the radionics machine in conjunction with pyramidal structure, then the effect is enhanced. So our assumption is that the pyramid helps us amplify the cosmic vital energy that comes to us. So you see the prospect. We are talking about these beings, so we can sacred geometry in a major way to invite these beings, invoke these beings within us, and we just have to learn it. We know how to use it to channel vital energy. Now we have to learn how to channel archetypal energy with this sacred geometry, and it is quite possible.
That's beautiful, actually, from my point of view, from my experience of sacred geometry and the patterns that are there. I just want to thank you for saying that. And I want to come back to this concept of archetypes so that people understand. You've mentioned the word archetype several times, both of you, in conversation and in relation to extraterrestrial beings. So we have an archangel such as this again is based on the Christian church, but an archangel such as Archangel Michael, who represents protection and those sort of things. And then we have an archangel such as Archangel Raphael, that is representative of healing, for example. Now, I recognize that they're Christian symbolism, but fundamentally, are you talking about archetypes in that sort of sense, in that sense of labeling and template making? Could you, either of you?
Actually, the archetypes represented by the archangels are the integration of several archetypes. You will notice that Raphael doesn't just heal. It is also archetype that can lead us to truth. Right. So, and that is true of every one of the archetypal representations that we have, like for Greeks, for Indians. The Indian archetypal spectrum is very highly developed, this concept of Deva and Devi, the feminine. So, and the concept is the same. Initially, you get archetypes by themselves. And then you get pretty down-to-earth behavior. For example, take the archetype of abundance. Its first rendition is material wealth. So you get a representation called Kubera in Hinduism. It's not even a god, it's a demigod. So they knew that if you just take the material aspect of this archetype, which is how human beings began, then you will be forever stuck with only partial recognition of the power of the archetype. But you generalize, and immediately it's no longer Kubera. Now it's transformed into goddess Lakshmi. Now Lakshmi is bringing the quality of love into the archetype of abundance. So archetype of abundance you are exploring now, not with the idea of just enriching yourself, but also with the idea of enriching others. So this concept, which is what led from angel to archangel. Angels are individual archetypes. Archangels are when we integrate archetypes together to completely reveal newer aspects of the individual archetypes that would not be revealed exploring them by themselves. So these concepts we are finding, Valentina and I just finished a book called Return of the Archetypes. We have made a special point, and Valentina, you should talk about the Dasa Mahavidya.
Yeah, go Valentina, go on.
It's a lot. I think maybe most people need to understand in more basic terms about these archetypes, like levels of consciousness you want to think. Yeah. So take it from the constricted state of consciousness, of course, which is the ego, right? So from the ego, yeah. And then when you say soul, that's the soul, which is the realm of the archetypes also already, is the pre-conscious station of the self, right? In the spiritual tradition, we speak only about the self, that ultimate, the Atman, the quantum self. Okay, so on the way to that is the archetypes. And again, the soul or the supramental level where the archetypes reside, we speak about them there, it's a turning point. And it's the first major step also in yoga after awakening of the heart. And it's a crucial step in our inner development, And we have in so many traditions, models, and examples, right? But they are a modality in itself to make us aware of who we really are, So we need to know, to awaken and to manifest this archetype, to embody that, even if you will never be able to fully embody an archetype, because are the highest, the noblest values that man can conceive, And but still, when you awaken this archetypal energy, or divine attributes, it helps us to reconnect with the source of cosmic power and with God, with this divine consciousness which is there, right? And as if this, you can think of this archetype as a ray that takes you directly to the source eventually, okay? And again, when you understand which is your main archetype, which is related to your dharma, then you don't go left and right so much, you know where to go. Yeah. And of course you cannot, again, like I said, you cannot really get there in that way, but it can be something which you keep in the background, and it makes all the sense in the world that you shape all your life according to that. It has to give you this kind of passion. And that's a problem nowadays. We have so much lack of meaning and purpose, we are just living so, with the brake on all the time. And again, how can you have the courage, the love, the discernment that you need in order to see what is really a highly extraterrestrial being, which one is there to help you, or what is this fake invasion, which sometimes, it's discussed about. So this really, discovering the archetypes is fundamental.
And so that sort of fake invasion is it can be either partly self-induced, or an actual imposter. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
but it's all stemming from the heart.
But it's a lot about that. So I'm not going to go too much in this direction, actually not at all, but just check about this fake invasion. People talking, about fake alien invasion, and even creating these holograms of Buddha, of Jesus on the sky. So just watch these kind of things, because so many things you don't, you have to be able to distinguish. How will you distinguish if you don't awaken this discernment inside of you?
Yeah, discernment, exactly, discernment. Okay. And so just to wrap up that concept of the archetypes and extraterrestrial beings, obviously archangels are extraterrestrial, but there are other archetypes. So what we're saying is that as we develop, as we come across more and more beings, they are representative. They are fulfilling an archetype role as well. That's what you're already saying. Is that right?
Yeah,
Valentina, what, Amit?
Archetypal realms are, you were very right. There are, in fact, there is some recognition in the spiritual literature of archetypal realm being of two kinds. One is without form, that's the pure Platonic archetypes. And then archetypes with form, and they're seriously talking about embodied form.
Okay.
So these embodiments are a very interesting subject. Can one be embodied with the archetype and create these forms actually as embodied forms, not just visualizations that we put on things? This is a question that has opened up because of the discovery of dark matter. We do have a different kind of more subtle matter now that pervades the universe much more than the visible matter that we are made of. So there is a possibility that these archetypal forms are embodied in dark matter, and therefore it's not complete nonsense to talk about it. Of course, it's a little premature to talk about it because right now we have no way that we can experiment with dark matter. But as we develop these connections, with extraterrestrials and the galactic collective unconscious, if these concepts pan out, then the future may be entirely different. And also we must not forget reincarnation. Reincarnation, that ability enables us to take birth. As soon as I free my mind, there is only earth. As soon as we free our mind from that, we can take birth in another planet easily, just as we have done before. Initially there is a tendency of everybody to be reborn in the same family, and then we start branching out into different cultures. Same thing. Completely different culture, an alien culture that we call it, but they are not really alien, they are human. and this alien stranger, as this word, give way to more possibility. We look at a person that I don't know, it is just encountering, oh, another new possibility. Let's, it's always friend, always another opportunity to make acquaintance with new possibilities to explore. When you start looking at that with our intergalactic friends, or intragalactic friends initially, then the whole evolution will take a new shape and form.
That's fantastic. That's a great way of looking at it. It really is. Really is. Okay. Of course, I could talk to you for weeks, both of you. But I'm not going to. I thank you so much for spending another hour with us. Wonderful, wonderful, lovely. Thank you.